Hello, I'm Stephanie Beloris, your host for Forrester's podcast, What It Means, where we explore the latest market dynamics impacting executives and their customers. Today, I'm joined by principal analyst Naveen Chabra to discuss the impact of Broadcom's acquisition of VMware and what options technology executives have today. Welcome, Naveen.
Hey, thanks, Steph. Thanks for having me here.
Great. So let's first take a step back. Can you give us an overview of this acquisition and why it's such a big deal, and also why so many technology executives are really concerned with this acquisition, as opposed to like other deals in the space? There's been other mega deals, but this one has been particularly controversial.
So VMware, as we know, has changed hands many times in the past, but the Broadcom's acquisition of VMware is making the most impact because Broadcom has infused changes into all the 5 Ps of a typical product marketing. So what I mean by that, VMware has changed its product packaging, the pricing, the licensing, the promotion, and the partners network through which it goes to market. And all of that is making the tech exec feel disruption because of the changes. We'll go into all the details of what each of these change typically means for them. But so many changes all at once are unsettling for the tech execs.
Right. And it took a long time for this acquisition to close. I mean, under a lot of regulatory scrutiny. But then it seemed as the moment it closed, like they rolled out these changes immediately. So is it also just like it's the span of it, but it's also the abruptness of it?
Yes, it is. What it also shows us that Broadcom was behind the scenes working on all the changes that it would immediately enforce on VMware soon after the acquisition is closed.
Can you give us a sense of some of these changes? You mentioned like every aspect of it, but or like which of the changes have been the most concerning for VMware customers?
All the changes have been concerning. So let's start off with the first one, products. Soon after acquisition, VMware decided that the products would not be sold in a perpetual manner. It would be subscription-based, right? Many products, VMware has already sold many of the products. For example, the VMware Horizon Workspace ONE, which was for end-user computing, that has already been sold off to KKR. So it has changed hands. Soon after the acquisition, it has gone to another company, like the third company now. Thinking about the product licensing we talked about, everything is in a subscription manner. The next change, companies could buy products a la carte based on what they needed. But now all the VMware products would only be sold in 2 packages.
Right. How many products were we talking about prior that you could buy on a perpetual license a la carte almost immediately overnight? They go to subscription only, and now you have to buy them from 2 packages only.
So it might not seem like a lot of change, but imagine this. If you're using one product, you have to buy a package. And interestingly, if that product is not in the smaller package, you have to buy the whole bigger package, which is much more pricier, right? And here comes the next aspect of the licensing change, which is earlier the products were licensed based on the number of processors or the number of cores. Now the licensing has changed to number of cores for all the products, for both the packages. But interestingly, a minimum of 16 cores per processor. And that will lift up the prices significantly for all the customers.
I want to come back to the pricing, but I guess maybe to take an even bigger step back, for those who aren't familiar with VMware, maybe we should also just talk about how important this company's technology has actually been to the tech stack and to cloud adoption and to hybrid cloud. How broadly adopted is VMware?
I'm pretty sure that the tech execs know VMware because, at least for their hypervisor, VMware's hypervisor technology, because that's the most embedded technology in any tech organization. So hypervisor, in fact, is the cash cow. Look at the financial results from VMware and you can easily make out which products are making the most money. Hypervisor has been, or the server virtualization has been making the most money. And very recently, when Broadcom finalized the acquisition, they also published who were the prime vendors that were bringing in revenue for VMware. Dell brought in, on an average, $5.5 billion every year in the past 3 years. And what would Dell sell the most? Servers and server virtualization on top of it. And at max, Dell would also sell an offering like HCI offering, which is called vSAN, and a few more products, VMware products, but server virtualization, hyperconverged infrastructure, HCI. But most of it has been the server virtualization. And coming back to the question, so you were asking about, do people know it?
Oh, I know people know it, but do they understand just how deeply ingrained VMware is in most organizations like tech stack? I mean, it is just fundamental enabling technology.
It is. And in fact, I go to say that power of VMware is not within and by the VMware's technologies itself. VMware has got a network effect, and that brings the power to VMware. Or if you look at the entire ecosystem from an IT operations tool, monitoring tools, logging tools, data backup and protection tool, disaster recovery tools, security tools. If you look at the entire ecosystem, every company, every vendor in the tech space almost always rallied behind VMware technologies and primarily the VMware hypervisor, the server virtualization technologies. So that brings VMware the power and the widespread adoption that it has in most large organizations.
So for people to understand, it's not like you can just decide to move off VMware. That would be like a project that would take years. So where we left off on the pricing, I mean, we talked about this moving away from the option of processor and cores. So now it's cores, and it's a 16 core minimum. So which means if you don't have that type of server or you're unoptimized, in some cases, clients are seeing 200% increases, 300% increases.
Oh, anecdotally, I have heard clients telling me that anywhere between 400 to 700% price increases, and that's very common. Even though there are exceptions that are talking about 1200%, but that's way off.
That's if you head into the renewal discussion blindly. If you just kind of accept what's on the table, based on the new packaging options and the new pricing, you're going to get that sticker shock, which is, oh my God.
Yeah. So think about this. The lesser the number of products that you have been using, the higher the price shock be, right? But if you're using the entire bundle, you may actually be on the receiving side. You may actually gain, right? But unless you have entirely optimized server fleet, you would still see an increase. And VMware has been very strategic in deciding, okay, here is the minimum threshold, 16 core license, because they know how many cores are typically deployed in the data center across the globe. And VMware has 300,000 customers. So they have the repository of all the servers that VMware is deployed on. And they could bring that minimum threshold to 16 to ensure that VMware is on the receiving side in terms of the revenue it gets from its customers.
Okay, that makes sense. Actually, I want to dig into something else, which is the shakeup of the partner ecosystem. So Dell used to be a partner, but then have announced they're no longer selling VMware, if I got that correctly. But I think what also clients were upset about was now that they've shuffled the partner program, they've made it much more streamlined and they've reduced the number of partners. So if you're a mid-sized enterprise that was used to working with a specific type of SI or VAR, suddenly they can no longer sell or support your VMware environment.
Yeah. So I think on the topic of partnership, we would have to take a step back and look at how many channels VMware was selling through. Sell-through is a category of partners, but VMware was selling through the server vendors, server OEMs like Dell, HP, Lenovo, and many more, Supermicro around the world. On records, VMware had 15 such server vendor partners. And the numbers show a significant portion of VMware's own revenue was coming from just one server vendor, Dell. But interestingly, other vendors were also bringing significant revenues. And if I'm buying from a server vendor, I can easily buy the VMware licenses and be done with it. With the change now that VMware or Broadcom has brought to the table, no server vendor can resell VMware licenses. That means as a customer, I would have to buy servers through a channel partner and VMware license through another partner. There's a possibility that, it may happen. So that's one part of the channel. The other part of the go-to-market has been the typical VARs, the resellers, and the system integrators. Broadcom has enforced all the VMware partners to be a part of the Broadcom partner ecosystem. And as a result, the number of partners that would qualify to be in the Broadcom's partner network has shrunk down from 28,000 to merely a few thousands. So that's a significant drop in the number of partners that you could transact with to get the VMware licenses. The third partner community was the service provider community, like the hosting providers, managed private cloud setup, DR services, data center hosting provider partners. There has been a significant reduction in the number of partners that qualify in that category as well. From what we are told, maybe not publicly known number. There are only 12 such partners in the US now, in contrast to a number of like 4,200 plus at a global level. In the US, there are only 12 such partners that qualify for the Broadcom Pinnacle partnership.
Interesting. So I guess like if just to play like devil's advocate, because we've talked about a lot of disruption right here, like changing the pricing, the changing the packaging, the changing the partnership model, which sounds incredibly disruptive if you've been used to VMware licensing a certain way for ages and working with a certain type of partner. But are there benefits? I mean, you mentioned for like certain clients that are using all 10 to 15 of core VMware products, like if they're buying the bigger package, like is it actually less money for them? And say you were forced to buy the bigger package, do you now have an opportunity to experiment with software and technologies that you wanted to in the past, but you hadn't had the budget for, but now you've been forced to buy into them? Might as well take advantage of it, like experiment with some of these other offerings now that you've essentially already paid for them. To some extent, that's kind of like the Microsoft model, which is, hey, buy my enterprise licensing and get all this great feature and functionality for free. So could there be a benefit for customers? And then I think about on the partner side, like, is there a benefit in a smaller number of partners that maybe Broadcom could vouch for that says like these are properly trained and they provide the best service and they have the closest, deepest relationships, as opposed to this partner ecosystem that literally has thousands and thousands? I mean, how do you control the quality of that kind of ecosystem?
So you have two questions in this. For sure, yeah. So, and I'm sure the client says, multiple more questions that you're asking right now. So let's start off with the first one. You talked about, can a large enterprise that gets the bigger package stand to be or to get advantage of the new pricing model? Technically, yes, or theoretically, yes. The only challenge is there are so many products in the VMware bigger package that, and these products are not catered towards one single persona. Let's say, for example, NSX has two products like NSX Firewall and Load Balancer. They typically go to different buyers in an organization. Then you have vSAN, which is for storage administrators, the storage people on. Then you have the ARIA automation and ARIA operations, which typically go to the IT monitoring and automation persona, right? So unless you are, as an organization, you are sold in or you buy in, you are a VMware shop, it would be hard to get the commercial advantage. But if your entire organization rallies behind the VMware products and technologies, I'm sure you would be able to take advantage of the new pricing model, right? And the second part of the question was about the partners, right? While Broadcom has enforced that there are smaller number of partners, the one more change that Broadcom has enforced is that some of these Pinnacle partners would also take L1, L2, L3 support calls for VMware products. While it is good on one hand in terms of bringing support closer to the customers because partners are able to offer that support, but in case of high priority issues that come up in products, whether those are bugs or security impacts, it would eventually take more time for those problems to be realized or to be known by the product teams back in VMware, because there's one more hop, right? So there is advantage, but there's also a disadvantage.
Okay. So for those customers who decide, hey, I'm not going to get any advantage out of the new package, and I'm upset that I can't work with the partner that I've wanted to work on, like, what is your prediction? Like, how many customers do you think are migrating off of VMware as a result?
So at Forrester, we predicted towards the end of 2023, we predicted that 20% of enterprise customers will start to move away. It doesn't mean that they will move away completely or they will move away overnight, because it's going to be a multi-year journey. It's complex deployments. It's large-scale deployments. We clearly see the signs of that happening. Would that be 20%? Would that be 30%? Or would that be just 10 to 15%? We don't know at this time. But by the end of this year, I clearly see signs of customers starting to move away. And large enterprise customers, because we know that this is it would be a very complex migration because a deeply ingrained technology, they're starting to take steps. In fact, one of the financial services institution that I had a privilege to talk to, this bank told me that, hey, we have moved away one of our core applications from VMware to a competing product, to a competing platform. Did it take them like a month? No. It took them 6 months. It is still in a testing stage. but by the end of the year, it will be done. There's another hosting company in Australia that has moved like 24,000 VMs, or that is claiming to move 24,000 VMs away from VMware to competing products. So it's clearly happening. The scale and the intensity will vary depending on the exposure a company has and how fast can they react to it, where in the renewal cycle they are in. If they don't have much time left, and I've talked to many clients, those who have like 3 months left, right? They're not going to migrate away. Only those who have reasonable amount of time, like between a year to 3 years, they are taking significant steps to move away from VMware.
And I assume, these are pretty significant changes. And even though there's been a backlash, we don't have any indication that Broadcom/VMware are going to roll back any changes. They're committed to this.
Interestingly, there has been one change that Broadcom has made, and I believe that was because the EU regulators, coming behind after listening to many customers in the EU, they decided that if a VMware customer doesn't want to continue paying for the support for zero-day vulnerabilities, they will still get patch updates. They would still be eligible for that. How long will that program last? We can't say. But it is clearly an indication that VMware is listening to the customers. Maybe it's not making all the changes that the customers are asking for, but they're giving some leeway back to the customers.
A little bit of leeway, but by and large, customers should assume that these packages, the new approach to the partner program, that'll stay in place. So then I guess the question is, like you said, I guess there's two types of customers. One, like you want to leave, or two, you want to stay. So I guess if you want to stay, or because you have no choice to stay, what are your options now?
I've looked at the list of all the alternative vendors, so to say, that offer one or more competing products to the VMware products. Interestingly, if I look at the whole vendor list, there isn't any vendor that can give you all the products that VMware offers, right? So what it means is that you would have to look at multiple vendors and you would have to do multiple product evaluations or assessments simultaneously.
Right. As you said, move up. If you decide to stay, again, because either you have to or your renewal's coming in less than 6 months, so you don't have the option. What steps can you do to optimize or maybe like avoid that sticker shock of 500% increase in your VMware bill?
So there are a few optimization options available. First and foremost is the server optimization. What I mean by that is we just talked about the license starts off with 16, minimum of 16 cores. And I have talked to many clients, those who do not have 16 cores in all the servers in the data center or in the edge locations or remote locations. They're still running with much less core configuration. Whether you like it or not, you would have to pay for 16 cores. And that change itself presents an opportunity for the customers by means of upgrading the servers, especially for those that have already been amortized. Depreciation has already been taken advantage of by the finance. And those are clear opportunities that companies can upgrade to newer servers, at least a minimum of 16 cores, so that you use all the licenses that you're paying for. It doesn't go to trash. That's one option. The other optimization methodology I've been recommending to clients is to look inside. Which all products have they been using? To what extent? Are there possibilities that they can reduce or limit the usage of the products to a certain section of servers or a subset of servers so that you don't have to buy the bigger package, let's say, for all the servers in your data center or all the servers in your branch locations? So consolidate your licenses, consolidate your server deployments. And that is one way to take advantage of the newer VMware licensing regime. The other way is to look at, hey, can I move off VMware, off hypervisor, server virtualization, especially in case of, let's say, database instances where the licenses are based on the actual number of server cores. So if you buy a new server to offset the VMware cost, you might end up paying a database vendor more because you have more server cores. Instead, you can bring the servers, the database applications to the physical server, not to run any hypervisor on that, right? So there are multiple ways in which you can optimize on your VMware license, and not just VMware license, but as a result, think about the new depreciation that you would be eligible for. Think about the newer servers would also have much more power, highly performant, it can improve your customer experience, right? So there are multiple side benefits along with the optimization of the VMware license.
So I think the key is all of these options are still complex. We're talking about upgrading servers or end-of-lifing servers and purchasing new or going back to physical servers. So I guess the key to me, what I hear is you can't wait till 3 months before the renewal to decide to optimize. You've got to start looking at your VMware renewal now. You can't wait.
You can. And don't expect that it can be done in 3 to 6 months' time.
Okay. So, longer term, what do we see the future? It seems like Broadcom probably was expecting some of the backlash, and maybe they're expecting to lose 15 to 20% to customers. The customers that remain do they think with these new packaging and the new partner ecosystem that they'll just continue to stay sticky with them? And now they'll get them to use more of the products in the bigger package. And they're just happy to kind of grow within these existing accounts as opposed to trying to go out and acquire new customers.
We can say that Broadcom had that policy or a strategy acquiring VMware. And in the hindsight, it looked like they had this philosophy or a strategy simply because Broadcom has strategized to focus on the top 600 customers, enterprise customers only. The rest of the customers, of the 300,000 customers at a global level, all of those would be addressed by the channel partners.
So I guess what does the future hold? Do we think some other competitor people get excited about? Broadcom just kind of stays in the background, stays embedded? So
I think the VMware technology will continue to be an integral part of any tech deployment at large organizations. But competitors are also amping up their marketing. Competitors are coming up with new offerings. For example, Nutanix just in the last week announced a partnership with Dell where it will support external storage. One of the key lock-in for VMware customers was that VMware was the only hypervisor technology that would support external storage. Rest all, whether it was Nutanix and multiple more vendors, they were all operating with the hyper-converged infrastructure architecture, which doesn't support external storage. Nutanix came out with a partnership with Dell to support external storage. So that's directly addressing some of the VMware customers.
Great. Well, definitely exciting times. So I guess final advice to technology executives, don't wait. Start looking at your licenses now. Start thinking about ways to optimize. Start even potentially evaluating the competition, whether you're seriously going to move off or not.
Yep. And I would just say that when you're thinking about, when tech leaders, those who are listening to us, they think about alternatives, develop a comprehensive plan. Because there are a lot of sticky points, a lot of dependencies within the VMware stack that you don't want to identify once you have decided, hey, I'm moving to a vendor XYZ. You don't want to identify that. Develop a comprehensive plan right away, so that you address all those dependencies and you don't face any surprises.
Okay, great. Well, Naveen, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
If you like what you heard today, be sure to check out the agenda for our upcoming technology and innovation summits in Austin, London, and Sydney. Learn more at for.com/tech events. That's FORR.com/tech events. Thanks for listening.